do, Anwar, is to change the angle of your camera, because right now we see you sideways. So if you could shift there you go. So you can hear me. So the first thing we need is, oh, is it not happening? Okay, so you've tried it and it's not happening. Then the second thing I want you to do, Anwar, is to unmute so we can hear you. And I'll just tilt my head a little bit. You're beautiful on both 90 degrees and on 0 degrees. So
thank you.
We'll enjoy the benefit of that view. Now, Anwar, you, of course, you represent Pakistan. You're a senator for Pakistan. So I hate to do the kind of thing where, Andalib gets asked about women and you get asked about Balochistan. But even though I hate to do it, I am going to actually go ahead and ask you, one of the perspectives or issues that's going to be really important is the way in which this generation of Afghan refugees settles. And there's two questions there. One is about how Pakistan will absorb any new migration wave. And so I'd love to hear your view on what impact a new wave of migration will have on Quetta, on Mastung, on Qila Saifullah, on the various parts of Balochistan that you are familiar with and are from. And the other question I had was what you think the impact of the global Afghan diaspora will be on the politics of the countries in which they go and locate. Because I think that nobody that's leaving Afghanistan today particularly has very good feelings for Pakistan. How will that translate in the long term? Anwar?
Thank you, Musharraf. I wanted to give a brief background on how do I view a situation, but I'll directly come to the question you have raised. The influx of the new refugees, let me put it that way, I do not see that happening around Balochistan or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa for that matter. Why I'm saying so? The currently internally displaced people are there within the territorial boundaries of Afghanistan. The Taliban have taken the effective control of all the border points. We have got an effective mechanism of the fencing on the Afghan borders. And lastly, to be honest with you, the new influx of the refugees, the people who want to get out of Afghanistan in this situation, does not seem to be more interested to land in Pakistan. And the prime reason appears to me when I see as a Pashtun and someone who can understand Dari also, a lot of social media information is coming out also. Most of them want to land in Europe, US, or Canada in the Western Hemisphere. And that is one of the reasons that the Fortress Europe has to think about. And it's not just the new influx of the refugees. Let's not forget there are 5 million Afghans currently residing, registered, non-registered, in Afghanistan, and over 1 million in Iran, and 500,000 probably in Turkey. So who would differentiate once they land on the shores of the Mediterranean? And if they enter Europe, you cannot appreciate that whether it's a 50 years old Afghan who has been residing in Quetta or Peshawar, or who has just left Kunduz or Kandahar or Uruzgan for that matter. So bigger challenge as far as the influx of the refugees is concerned, and there will be a boon of human traffickers. I mean, I've been reading some articles currently on this subject, and people are quite wary, and there are the authorities all over the Europe, particularly because to reach the US is a huge challenge. But Europe is more vulnerable. And this is one of the reasons I think Pakistan should engage EU and use Brussels to cajole London, Washington, both, that a peaceful settlement of a de facto future Afghan government is not just in the interest of the region, but it has its global implications also, not just for the reason of terrorism, but for the reason of illegal immigration, for the reason of which will have social and political implications for the West. How they're going to assimilate in those societies. I mean, it's not that whosoever, I mean, we have been continually accused that there was a sense of jubilation in Pakistan over the takeover of Taliban in Afghanistan. I know for a fact that there has been a sense of jubilation of Afghan origin US citizens, Afghan origin European citizens. Most of them are conservative Pashtuns, though they are residing in East London or West London or maybe in Chicago or LA or whatever, but they do have their sense or a blend of religious nationalism. And for them, the same countries which they have adopted as their new homes equally stands as a symbol or which epitomizes as occupational force. So their sense of being an Afghan and a loyal Afghan to their soil, it gets a sense of satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment is there that yes, we are the Afghans, that is the so-called graveyard of empire, so we got rid of them. When they go out in the town, they are very proud Afghan people. And that sense of jubilation is at individual level. I know it's not been articulated at some platform or on an organized forum, but the sense is there. So it is all over the place, the place, not just in Pakistan, Europe, Canada, Australia, anywhere, wherever you find an Afghan or Pakistani, you would see that kind of a sense. But does it translate?
The issue, Anwar, I guess the issue there would be, and if you don't mind, I'd like to bring Andalib, and then I'd like to go back to Sohail Aman Saab, and then to Salim, and then back to Foreign Secretary Khokar. This issue, let me pose this to you, Madam Andalib Abbas. You know, you've been a member of the PTI, and you've known the Prime Minister for decades, and I think that you were right to identify his kind of his vision of an inclusive and conciliatory approach being the only way forward. One of the things that I think many of his critics, including myself, have always given him credit for is that the humaneness of the Prime Minister's approach, not just to domestic affairs, but all over. On the issue of refugees, you know, when he began as Prime Minister, he had said some very interesting things. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity maybe to explain to those who are listening whether the Prime Minister continues to feel strongly about the rights of you know, people who were born in Pakistan in terms of their ownership of Pakistani citizenship or potential for Pakistani citizenship, and more widely, whether this idea of closing the border or sealing the border is one that is consistent with the genetic humaneness that I think is a PTI quality. Maybe you can explain that a little bit as well. Madam Andalib Abbas, and you'll unmute to begin speaking, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Musharraf. I think this is a very important question and very valid one, because there are two aspects to it. One is, of course, that Afghanistan has always been, you know, it's almost a country that we have always with open arms welcomed them. Pakistan is the only country in the world which has hosted 3.4, 3.5 million refugees, given them the opportunity that Pakistanis have, and in turn suffered because of that as well. We have suffered because there has been a porous border, you know, there has been terrorism opportunities coming up. It's very difficult for us to find out in 3.5 million people who are with you, against you, who have, you know, connections, who don't have connections. And then you had a porous. We have, over a period of time, realized this conflict, cross-border conflict. We have a fence now over there. We have checkposts over there. And every time, if you remember, we offered Afghanistan that we want to have biometric testing. They refused. They didn't want to have biometric testing. And, you know, 25,000 people crossing the border every day was a big problem for us. So we decided that this time we were prepared for it, that if there is a conflict, our acceptance of the refugees is going to be very, very limited, because we simply do not have the capacity. And instead of creating more problems, the humanity is there, they are brothers. I mean, what more can we say that Afghanistan cricket team as one of the best in the world, and they've all learned cricket from Pakistan, and they acknowledge that as well. We have so much in common with them. But unfortunately, the problem is that for both Afghanistan and for us, if the refugee situation increases and we have to keep hordes and hordes, the internally displaced people plus the refugees pose such a danger to both the countries that we have decided that because we don't have the capacity, we will be very, very careful in any influx that is coming in, number one. Number two, we as a nation which has been termed as the most generous and hospitable nation in the world on refugee sort of acceptance, have looked at the whole picture. It's a wholesome picture. And we realize that a problem that we cannot safeguard, a problem that we cannot ensure, which is basically the crossover over terrorism elements, and of course, housing and giving them the same treatment we gave them so many years ago because of capacity constraints, we will be very careful in accepting them this time.